3. No member-elect having received a majority of the votes cast, the Speaker has not been elected. For what purpose does the gentleman from Kentucky rise?
I rise on behalf of the Republican Party to nominate Kevin McCarthy for Speaker of the 118th Congress.
The gentleman is recognized.
For the past 2 years, one-party Democrat rule has resulted in multiple crises that are harming Americans without any oversight or accountability from this body. Americans are facing historic inflation, skyrocketing energy costs, the worst border crisis in American history, and surging fentanyl overdoses. One of the reasons is there's been no congressional oversight. There's no sense of urgency from this White House or the bureaucrats that populate this town to move. Now, I want to talk about that. Oversight of our tax dollars, that's our responsibility. We've all heard reports of hundreds of millions of dollars of potential waste and fraud in the unemployment insurance programs in all 50 states. We've all heard reports of misuse of hundreds of millions of dollars of the stimulus money, of PPP loan funds. But yet, there has not been a single hearing in the House Oversight Committee about this. The border crisis. We've made several trips on this side of the aisle to the border. We've listened to the Border Patrol agents. Their message is loud and clear. Under President Biden, the Border Patrol has become the welcoming committee. They're begging for help to do their job. Law enforcement officers in all 50 states are begging Congress to force this administration to secure the border, to do something about the fentanyl crisis that plagues every community in every state in our great nation. Americans watched in disarray at the debacle in Afghanistan, and Americans were left with many questions. How much equipment was left behind for the Taliban? How many Americans were left behind? The origination of COVID-19. We all know someone personally who lost their life during COVID-19. They deserve answers to what really happened in that lab in Wuhan, China. Those of us who had kids in the public school system can testify that our kids have lost a year of their education because of the forced virtual learning that so many of our schools put our children through during the COVID pandemic. Congress ran the debt up at least $3 trillion in the name of COVID-19. Yet, as I mentioned earlier, there has not been a single hearing in the Oversight Committee to deal with potential waste, fraud, or abuse of the COVID funds. Not a single hearing. And we all know, despite what Dr. Fauci said, American tax dollars were sent through EcoHealth Alliance to the Wuhan lab in China for gain-of-function research. But yet Dr. Fauci hasn't come before Congress in the House of Representatives. The American people deserve answers on COVID-19, and Speaker Kevin McCarthy has given the Republican majority the tools necessary to make that possible. The Democrats have spent the past 6 years investigating a president for potential wrongdoing in Ukraine and Russia. Now let me say this loud and clear. The Republicans will also investigate a president for potential wrongdoing in Ukraine and Russia, as well as China. The American people have a lot of questions for Dr. Fauci, Christopher Wray, Merrick Garland, Secretary Mayorkas. We can't have those questions. We can't ask those questions until we get organized and elect our Speaker. The role of the Oversight Committee under Speaker Pelosi was a full-time committee to harass the previous president, a committee to advocate for wage social issues, which the Oversight Committee had absolutely no jurisdiction, and a committee totally uninterested in the American taxpayer. In a Republican majority under Speaker Kevin McCarthy and many of my friends embedded in these negotiations, the House Oversight Committee with strong members like Byron Donalds and Andy Biggs and Jim Jordan will return to its original mission of identifying waste, fraud, abuse, and mismanagement in the federal government and holding unelected bureaucrats accountable. In a Republican majority under Speaker Kevin McCarthy, the forgotten working men and women's voices will finally be heard and represented. And in a Republican majority under Speaker Kevin McCarthy, this broken Congress will finally be fixed, and we will return to regular order, and we will drag those senators kicking and screaming along with us every step of the way. We will return to regular order. We will get the backs of the American taxpayers. This is the people's house. Let's get to work. Madam Clerk, I'm proud to nominate Kevin McCarthy to be the next Speaker of the United States House of Representatives, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Texas rise?
Madam Clerk, I rise to nominate a great leader, a unifier, not a divider, Hakeem Jeffries, for Speaker of the United States House of Representatives.
The gentlewoman is recognized.
We are on day 4, the 13th vote, and House Democrats continue to stand united with Hakeem Jeffries, with him and for him, because he is a uniter, not a divider, and a positive force of nature. 2 days ago, during the 4th, 5th, maybe the 6th roll call, a nominator claimed this process should not be considered dysfunction. Madam Clerk, their process didn't begin this week. They've had months to figure this out. And Americans should have profound concerns about what this portends. As we gather here in this chamber on this solemn day, the second anniversary of January 6th, when members of law enforcement were under siege, when there was an attempted coup, an insurrection that will live in infamy, what we lived through was an assault on our republic and on our democracy from within. On that day, when my colleagues and I were trapped in this gallery, the terrorists who assaulted our police officers could be heard banging on these doors, breaking these windows, and they were here to prevent the certification of a free and fair election. I shudder to think what a Republican majority's inability to govern would have meant on that day, and what it could mean in the future for those of us who believe in defending our democracy abroad and now more than ever here at home. On this painful anniversary, thankfully, the Honorable Hakeem Jeffries made sure that we came together to mark the moment, to honor our law enforcement, recognize the lives lost as a result of that day, honor the families and the survivors, and to ensure that we recommit to our republic and our democracy. That is the kind of speaker that our nation needs. We are now 4 days into what should be the 118th Congress, and the House of Representatives has no committees, no rules, no classified briefings, no members who have taken their oaths to serve our country. There are no debates happening on this floor about addressing the challenges we face at home or around the globe. No votes on legislation to tackle the challenges facing the American people. Madam Clerk, they told the American people they wanted to win the majority to fight inflation. The only thing they're fighting is each other. These 4 days have tested House Republicans' ability to govern, and they have failed. With Hakeem Jeffries as our Speaker, Congress can continue to deliver common sense, bipartisan solutions for the American people. Instead, what we've seen unfold before our very eyes is exactly what's in store for the country over the next 2 years under Republican control. And this should be deeply concerning to the American people who expect us to do our jobs and fulfill even the most fundamental functions of this institution, like voting on the debt ceiling to fund expenditures we've already made. What if this happens then? What if we default on our debts because of the Republican majority's inability to govern? What impact will that have on our economy or on the global economy? And in less than 9 months, in September, we have a vote to fund the government, to pay for our military, Social Security, Medicare, and other obligations. What happens on September 30th when government funding runs out and they're in charge? With Hakeem Jeffries as our Speaker, we can continue to advance an agenda that puts people over politics, just as we did in the 117th Congress with a majority as slim as theirs. Es un gran honor nominar a mi amigo. Madam Clerk, as co-chair of the House Democratic Policy and Communications Committee, and in accordance with the vote of the House Democratic Caucus, I'm honored to present for election to the office of Speaker of the House of Representatives for the 118th Congress the name of a man of integrity and intellect who is bold and brilliant, and most importantly, a man who leads with love, the Honorable Hakeem Jeffries, representative from the state of New York.
The reading clerk will call the roll. Adams. Jeffries. Adderholt. Adderholt. Aguilar. Jeffries. Alford.
Kevin McCarthy.
McCarthy. Allen.
McCarthy.
McCarthy. Allred. Jeffries. Amadei. Amadei. Armstrong. McCarthy. Arrington. Arrington. Auchincloss. Jeffries. Babin. McCarthy. Bacon. McCarthy. Baird.
McCarthy. Balderson. Balderson. Ballant. Jeffries. Banks. McCarthy. Farr. McCarthy. Barragan. Jeffries. Bean of Florida. McCarthy. Beatty. Jeffries. Bentz. McCarthy. Barra. Jeffries. Bergman. McCarthy. Beyer. Jeffries. Bice. McCarthy. Biggs. Jordan. Bilirakis. Bilirakis. McCarthy. Bishop of Georgia. Jeffries. Bishop of North Carolina. McCarthy. Blumenauer. Jeffries. Blunt Rochester. Jeffries. Boebert. Jordan. Bonamici. Jeffries. Bost. McCarthy. Bowman. Jeffries. Boyle of Pennsylvania. Jeffries. Burkeen. McCarthy. Brown. Jeffries. Brownlee. Jeffries. Buchanan. McCarthy. Buck. Buck. Bouchon. McCarthy. Bazinski. Jeffries. Burchett. McCarthy. Burgess. McCarthy. Burleson. McCarthy. Bush. Jeffries. Calvert. McCarthy. Kamek. McCarthy. Caraveo. Jeffries. Carbajal. Jeffries. Cardenas. Jeffries. Carey. McCarthy. Carl. McCarthy. Carson. Jeffries. Carter of Georgia. McCarthy. Carter of Louisiana. Jeffries. Carter of Texas. McCarthy. Cartwright. Jeffries. Kassar. Jeffries. Case. Jeffries. Caston. Jeffries. Castor of Florida. Jeffries. Castro of Texas. Jeffries. Chavez de Remer. McCarthy. Sherferlis McCormick. Jeffries. Chu. Jeffries. Cicilline. Jeffries. Siscomani. McCarthy. Clark of Massachusetts. Jeffries. Clark of New York. Jeffries. Cleaver. Jeffries. Klein. Klein.